All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use Live at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host, and thanks for tuning in today. Let's get started with our affirmation for today. Getting some coaching or mentoring is perhaps the fastest and best thing you can do to make a massive change in the shortest amount of time. I'm going to say that again. Getting some coaching or mentoring is perhaps the fastest and best thing you can do to make a massive change in the shortest amount of time. This is from the You Are a Badass calendar from Jen Sincero. So that's our affirmation for today. Let's go ahead and get into the news. Okay, here's our first story. This is a follow up of a story we covered, I don't know, what, about a year or so ago. And you've probably heard about it on social media, but if you have not, and just a refresher, there's a nurse that amputated a patient's foot without permission, and she has been criminally charged. And this is what the article says: the two charges dismissed against the nurse accused of removing patient's foot without permission. This is coming out of Wisconsin. Excuse me. So, two charges are dismissed against a nurse accused of removing a patient's foot without permission. Online court records show on July 2nd of 2025, 40-year-old Mary Kay Brown of Durand, Wisconsin, was found guilty due to no contest plea on a charge of negligently abuse patients no harm. Brown is ordered to pay court costs, so that's around like $400 some. Online court records also show Brown agrees to stipulate to any and all discipline against her nursing license as proposed by the Board of Nursing. So Brown, who was a nurse, was charged in Pierce County Court, Circuit Court, in 2022 after being accused of cutting off a dying patient's foot without permission, according to court documents filed with the charges on June 4th of 2022. Investigators were notified about a death at a nursing home, Spring Valley Health and Rehab Center in Spring Valley, Wisconsin, in which the body had been sent for an autopsy due to unusual circumstances about the person's death. The Pierce County medical examiner called for an autopsy after noticing that the foot of the person, a 62-year-old man, was not attached to his body but lying beside him at the funeral home. The medical examiner found that the man had been admitted to the nursing home in March of 22 after he had fallen in his home when the heat went out and had severe frostbite on both of his feet. According to the man's medical chart, his foot was amputated in May of 2022. According to the criminal complaint, Brown was the person who cut off the man's foot. And so apparently, this nurse cut off this man's foot, and then it was reported that she said she wanted to keep the foot and give to her family's taxidermy group so she could tell people and students what it looks like to have frostbite. I don't. I think that's very macabre of her. Um, she had no scope to do this. She was not instructed by the physician to amputate this foot. Um, yeah, it was a shocking case when it happened. I am very surprised at what the judge allowed in this case. I mean, obviously, the gentleman was probably not going to live very much longer anyway, but why would you take it upon yourself to amputate a foot? I don't know. There's just a lot about that, but let me know what you guys think about this. This is just horrible when I think about it. So this is a follow up and more fallout from the Nightingale case. So it says three more Connecticut nurses and fake college degree scandal have licenses revoked. So it says here that the Connecticut Board of Nursing Examiners agreed Wednesday to suspend three nurses who obtained their degrees from Florida schools under federal indictment as part of a massive U.S. Department of Justice investigation called Operation Nightingale. Under the suspension, the three nurses without a license out of Hartford and other places would not be able to work as a nurse. Nurse Shields was the only nurse of the three to attend the meeting. She said that she had 15 years of experience as a licensed practical nurse and 4 years experience as a nurse. Wait, I think that what they must mean is 4 years as a registered nurse. I take very good care of my patients, Shields said while questioning why her license was being suspended. Prigden also was an LPN prior to becoming a nurse. Again, these are nurses. I think what the article is trying to say was registered nurse. Um, yeah. DPH officials said she received instruction by email from the school, which does not qualify for a nursing degree. The three are part of 69 similar cases that were across the state of Connecticut with the licensing board. There's a lot of nurses that are just struggling with this, and there's total more than 7,500 people that were caught up in all of this with this fake degree stuff. So all of them were at all for-profit entities that were not always providing the required number of classroom or clinical training for nursing, potentially putting the public at risk. Federal documents and nursing board officials said. The Connecticut board was also notified by the National Council State Board of Nursing in November 2022, and since has been working to identify people who obtained Connecticut nursing licenses by citing the fraudulent degrees. So again, this is another more fallout from Operation Nightingale, and we also had a kind of a similar thing here in Indiana as well, of people obtaining licensure. There's some issues there, so we'll just continue to keep an eye on that story. Um, Here's another story that I just happened upon. I want to share that, and again, I believe this is out of um, South Carolina. Yeah, it says assisted living facility loses license after residents locked inside. The South Carolina Department of Public Health has issued um, sanctions against an assisted living. J.C. Larea South Winds Assisted Living Community and its facility is being investigated on Tuesday. DPH says they determined the action was necessary to protect the health and well-being of residents in accordance to the state ombudsman office. It says that there was a building um, on the grounds that had 5 residents that were there locked in by themselves. There was no staff available. There's also a second building that was discovered that had an additional 3 residents. According to DPH, locks on the doors prevented residents from leaving and increasing their risk. At least one of the residents appeared to be in need of more level of care than the facility was able to provide. The owner arrived in the first building from building 2 only when a DPH employee tried to open the door and an alarm was set off. There was no staff in the second building for more than 24 hours. At that time, the DPH staff believed that the conditions in the facility posed an imminent threat. And so what is happening is that they were potentially operating in illegal assisted living as they were only supposed to have 1 building according to the reports and not 2, and there were no staff available. So they have since been shut down, and we will see what is happening. Keep an eye on that story as well. So here's another story about an assisted living. This one says assisted living facility where 9 died in a fire was up for recertification this year, according to officials. This was in Massachusetts, and my hearts go out to the families that were affected. The Massachusetts assisted living facility that caught fire Sunday evening, leaving 9 dead, was slated to undergo a recertification and compliance review process later this year. Gabriel House is up for recertification in November 2025 and is on the list of the compliance reviews to be conducted this fall, a spokesperson for the Massachusetts Executive Office of Health and Human Services said in a statement Monday evening. An official briefed on the probe into the cause of the deadly fire told ABC News that, as a preliminary matter, the fire does not appear to have been set intentionally. More likely, the source said it appears to have been caused by some sort of electrical or mechanical problems. 30 people, including 5 firefighters, were taken to local hospitals after the deadly fire. The facility in Fall River is classified as an assisted living residence, not a nursing home, which is a difference. And this is why there's issues with the other stories of nursing assisted living, because they are under different rules than what is in place for a nursing home. So the distinction means that the complexes like Gabriel House are subject to different inspection, certification, and regulatory process than Massachusetts nursing homes. The Massachusetts Division of Healthcare Facility Licensure and Certification website said the division conducts unannounced inspections of nursing homes every 9 to 15 months. Since Gabriel House is considered an assisted living residence, its last on site visit by representatives of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Aging and Independence occurred in October of 2023. The office said at that time it found areas where Gabriel House was not in compliance with state regulations, and the facility was required to submit a plan of correction. So, for those who don't know, when they find any deficiencies, they'll often ask you to submit a plan of correction, and then the state has the opportunity to review that plan of correction and to see if they will accept it and lift any sanctions that they may have placed on you. A compliance review report sent to Gabriel House Executive Director Dennis Etzkorn indicated the alleged violations were primarily related to missing documentation. One part of the report noted that the state representatives reviewed a 90-day correspondence log, quote, required to communicate information necessary to maintain the continuity of care for all residents. The residents did not consistently document for each 24-hour period in the correspondence log. The residents did not use the correspondence log to communicate all significant or pertinent information necessary to maintain the continuity of care for all residents. Another part of the report said documentation of the residents monitoring the effectiveness of its evidence informed falls prevention program was missing for all calendar years, and that the personnel records of 3 employees were missing documentation of pre employment physical examination. Gabriel House's plan of correction indicated that the changes were made, and it received a certificate in December 2023. The certificate allowed Gabriel House to operate until November of this year. So that's important to note. Just a little bit about why maybe there are some things. This is a follow-up story that was reported in Yahoo and Fox News, and it says Massachusetts nursing home. This is, again, they labeled it as a nursing home, but this is not a nursing home. This is an assisted living. So they didn't get it right, Fox News. But anyway, Massachusetts nursing home staff accused of fleeing instead of helping elderly residents escape. A survivor of a Sunday blaze that tore through an assisted living in Massachusetts has claimed that staff members abandoned the burning scene, leaving the elderly residents to fend for themselves, while another said that the workers didn't even knock at doors to alert seniors as the flames spread. And so, again, one of the things that we talked about is that in some of the trainings, unless you are safely able to evacuate, one of the things they do, they teach you to close the doors, barricade. So it depends on what the safety protocols were in place for this. I would be curious to know what they had, but we'll go on. It says resident Lorraine Ferreira, 70, told the Associated Press of her shock to see staff running away from the fire that ultimately killed 9 people and injured dozens more at Gabriel House in Fall River. They left us alone and ran, Ferreira said. I was hanging out the window, help, help, and they just kept running. Meanwhile, resident Robert Cabral also said that the workers fled the terrifying scene in smoke-filled rooms. They didn't knock on one door, Cabral said. They just ran. Fox News Digital reached out to Gabriel Care, the operators of the facility, for comment, but did not immediately receive a response. The deceased were aged 61 to 86. The facility opened in 1999 and had 100 units with about 70 people residing there at the time. As well as workers apparently fleeing the scene, reports have emerged of an alleged lack of fire drills at the facility, while a firefighters union said inadequate staffing hindered the response to the blaze. And so what they were talking about is that the firefighters said that because of cuts in the city, this was related in another story, the cuts by the city, they weren't able to have an adequate response to the fire, allegedly. This is what they're saying. Paul Lazinkos, a former Massachusetts Secretary of Elder Affairs and co-founder of the advocacy group Dignity Alliance, said the group was concerned by reports about the apparent lack of fire drills as well as the low number of staff for a highly dependent population and safety issues such as a broken elevator and air conditioners in the windows. It's a terrible tragedy that should have never happened. Edward Kelly, president of the National Firefighters Union, said 8 additional firefighters would have been on scene if national staffing recommendations were followed. They did have some help. It said about 50 firefighters responded to the scene around 9:50, including 30 who were off duty. Police also helped break down doors and carried out residents. Captain Frank O'Regan said there was no breathing equipment available when he arrived, so he started going door to door to the 3rd floor without an air tank until the smoke got to him. O'Regan's brother and fellow firefighter Michael O'Regan said he was shocked that 40 minutes after firefighters arrived, a large part of the building had not been searched. We did the best we could with what we had, and what we had was not enough. The cause of the fire is still under investigations. Officials said it did not appear to be suspicious. Fall River Fire Chief Jeffrey Bacon told Boston 25 that the staffing levels is not unique to Fall River and that municipalities across the Commonwealth face similar concerns. The crews were faced with an incredibly difficult situation. A fire is a difficult situation. A rescue is a difficult situation. When you combine the two at this level that's called for, it was almost an impossible situation. You have to understand there were 70 people in there that they were trying to get out. And my question is, how many staff members did they have? And I don't know what the staff read. I don't know. But you have 70 residents, and I would almost guess that they probably had at most 5 people in the building, probably. I don't see where I don't know. And so there's understaffing too. I'm just curious to see how many staff members they actually had in there. And again, my heart goes out to those family members that were affected, and also the staff members that left and how they must feel as well. So if you were involved in that or you have any insight and you're in the Massachusetts area, kind of let me know. We'd love to share an update on this. If you have any other insight, let me know, or any news stories related to this. All right, why don't we go ahead and take a brief break and then we'll come right back. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. Okay. All right. So let's get back into the news. Okay, here's another story that I thought I'd share with you. This came from nurse.org. It says the Mayo Clinic delivers a 90-day notice of layoffs to over a dozen nurses. Okay, so Mayo Clinic's Austin facility in Minnesota recently issued 90-day layoff notices to its nursing staff, affecting at least a dozen nurses on July 10th, 2025. The nurses' last day will be October the 8th unless they find other positions within the Mayo Clinic health system. Mayo Clinic cited declining inpatient volumes as a reason for layoffs, but this explanation has an easy impact on the affected nurses or their community. I've dedicated years to this facility and our patients, one nurse shared. Getting this notice with little explanation feels like a slap in the face. Nurses dislike vague communication, whether from a patient, a doctor, or an employer. The layoff decisions were reportedly based on an HR algorithm, leaving many questioning the transparency of the process. According to then adding to the anxiety is the unclear path forward. Mayo Clinic has emphasized its employee transition program, encouraging nurses to apply for other roles within the system. However, the number of available positions remains unknown. It feels like we're being told to compete with each other for scraps, one nurse said. It's the nursing version of musical chairs, except the stakes are your livelihood. This isn't just a Mayo problem. Of course, across the U.S., instability is emerging in the nursing workforce as healthcare organizations respond to shifting patient needs, financial pressures, and post-pandemic changes in care models. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, nursing remains a growing field, but regional fluctuations in patient volumes, like those cited by Mayo, can create challenges in smaller communities. For the nurses in Austin, the local job market could be a hurdle. Some are looking at other facilities, and while others hope to land positions at different Mayo Clinic sites. In smaller towns, job options can be limited, and for nurses with families, moving to another city isn't always a simple solution. And knowing that, because I myself live in a smaller city, we have 2 hospitals here. Um, but a lot of people I know are working in other places. When I worked at the hospital in the town over, before they were bought by the larger system, they would often say, well, this is the only job in town, so you either stay with us or you can find somewhere else to go. It was kind of those things. So those small town vibes can be difficult, and you're rooted in your community. You know everybody that's there. You know, you go to the grocery store with them, you go to church with them, you go to, the theater with them. So you know the population, and then now you're having to find a new job, and maybe in another city, longer commute, more time away from your family. So I can understand their apprehension with this, and this uncertainty is terrible on anyone. It says, as the October 8th approaches, these nurses face tough decisions, and so does Mayo Clinic. The administration must balance its financial health with its responsibility to its employees and the community. Meanwhile, affected nurses are forming informal networks to share job leads and support each other. Because if there's one thing nurses how to do, it's stick together. For now, the situation remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: this isn't just about layoffs, it's about the ripple effect on a close knit community, the patients who rely on Mayo Clinic, and the future of nursing in southern Minnesota. So if you have any comments on this and you're from Minnesota, let me know. If you want to hear more about the story, check out this and other stories. Check out what they have at nurse.org. They have some great stories over there, and they do great work over there. Here's our next story from Healthcare Dive. Nursing home operator Genesis Healthcare files for bankruptcy. Genesis Healthcare, one of the largest providers of skilled nursing facilities in the country, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protections on Wednesday. Pennsylvania-based Genesis, who operated about 175 skilled nursing facilities across 18 states at its filing, said it struggled with post-pandemic challenges, legacy liabilities, and inadequate Medicaid reimbursement. Staff will retain their positions, and the filing is not expected to impact patient care. Affiliates of Genesis investor Regen Healthcare, a private equity firm, have entered into a deal to acquire Genesis, according to bankruptcy court documents filed Thursday. Regen's deal to acquire Genesis is a stalking horse bid, which sets a floor price to buy Genesis in the event of an auction. The private equity firm has invested in Genesis before, when it was on the verge of filing for bankruptcy for the second time in 2021, according to court documents. The operator had filed for Chapter 11 before in 2000 and emerged from restructuring in 2001. Regen's initial $50 million investment in 2021, paired with the lease restructuring agreement with Genesis' largest landlord, allowed the operator to narrowly avoid a bankruptcy filing. The private equity firm continued to invest in Genesis, and its investment totaled about $100 million. However, liabilities related to past expansions, years of financial stress, and deferred capital expenditures, pressures from the COVID-19 pandemic, and inadequate Medicaid reimbursement prompted Genesis to file for Chapter 11 protections again on Wednesday. All told, while Regen's cumulative investment of approximately $100 million over the last 2 years allowed the company to avoid bankruptcy and provided a liquidity runway to a business struggling with legacy liabilities and other business challenges, it was unfortunately insufficient to allow the company to fully transform its business model and achieve long-term viability. In initial filings, Genesis said it has up to 25,000 creditors with liabilities between $1 billion to $10 billion. Genesis has faced other financial challenges in the past, including a nearly $54 million fine in 2017 from the government for several allegations it violated the False Claims Act for submitting medically unnecessary therapy and hospice services and grossly substandard nursing care. Genesis joins a growing number of notable bankruptcies this year. In January, health system Prospect Medical Holdings filed for Chapter 11 protections. Last year, both medical center operator CareMax and hospital operator Steward Healthcare, which we've covered extensively on this show, filed for bankruptcy. Although healthcare bankruptcies declined in 2024, the sector still noted the second highest number of filings in the past 6 years. So healthcare is really struggling at this time, and it's something as things are changing, we really do need to look at how we are structuring healthcare, because what we're doing doesn't seem to be viable. Which brings us to this. More in nursing home news. It's from the Associated Press. It says, nursing homes face staffing crunch as Trump's immigration policies disrupt workforce. Nursing home already struggling to recruit staff are now grappling with President Donald Trump's attack on one of their few reliable sources of workers, immigration. Facilities for older adults and disabled people are reporting the sporadic loss of employees who have had their legal status revoked by Trump. But they fear even more dramatic impacts are ahead as pipelines of potential workers slow to a trickle with an overall downturn in legal immigration. We feel completely beat up right now, said Decay Cato, CEO of AG Roads, which operates the three nursing homes in the Atlanta area with one-third of the staff made up of foreign-born people from about 3 dozen countries. The pipeline is getting smaller and smaller. 8 of Cato's workers are expected to be forced to leave after their temporary protected status, or TPS, was revoked. TPS allows people already living in the U.S. to stay and work legally if their home countries are unsafe due to civil unrest or natural disasters. And during the Biden administration, the designation was expanded to cover people from 12 countries, including large numbers from Venezuela and Haiti. While those with TPS represent a tiny minority of AG Road's 500 staffers, Catal says they'll be very difficult, if not impossible, to replace, and he worries about what comes next. He says it may be 8 today, but who knows what's going to be down the road. Cato, who's an immigrant himself, who arrived from Trinidad and Tobago 25 years ago. Nearly 1 in 5 civilian workers in the U.S. is foreign born, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But as in construction, agriculture, and manufacturing, immigrants are overrepresented in caregiving roles. More than a quarter of an estimated 4 million nursing assistants, home health aides, personal care aides, and other so called direct care workers are foreign born, according to PHI, a nonprofit focused on caregiving workforce. The aging of the massive baby boom generation is poised to fuel even more demand of caregivers, both in institutional settings and individuals' homes. BLS projects more growth among home health and personal care aides than any other job, with some 820,000 new positions added by 2032. Nursing homes, assisted living facilities, home health agencies, and other such businesses were counting on immigrants to fill many of those roles. As so, Trump's return to the White House and his administration's attack on nearly all forms of immigration has sent a chill through the industry. Katie Smith Sloan, CEO of Leading Edge, which represents nonprofit care facilities, says homes around the country have been affected by the immigration tumult. Some have reported employees who have stopped coming to work, fearful of a raid, even though they are legally in the country. Others have workers who are staying home with children they have kept out of school because they worried about roundups. Many others see a slowdown of job applicants. This is like a punch in the gut, she says. Rachel Blumberg, CEO of Toby and Leon Cooperman Sinai residence in Boca Raton, Florida, has already lost 10 workers whose permission to stay in the U.S. came under a program known as humanitarian parole, which had been granted to people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. She is slated to lose 30 more in the coming weeks with the end of the TPS for Haitians. I think it's the tip of the iceberg, Bloomberg said, forecasting further departures of employees who may not want themselves to be deported, but whose spouse or parent is. Bloomberg got less than 24 hours' notice when her employees lost their work authorization, setting off a scramble to fill shifts. She had already boosted salaries and referral bonuses, but says it will be difficult to replace not just aides, but maintenance workers, dishwashers, and servers. Unfortunately, Americans are not drawn to applying and working in positions that we have available. So this is kind of similar to what the farmers are saying, construction worker industry is saying. Yeah. Frontline caregivers are overwhelmingly female, and a majority are members of minority groups, according to PHI, earning an average of just $16.72 hourly in 2023. Long-term care homes say an exodus of workers as COVID made an already challenging workplace even more so. Some facilities were beginning to see employment normalize to pre-pandemic levels just as the immigration crackdown hit, but industry-wide there is still a massive shortage of workers. Some in the industry have watched in frustration as Trump limited how businesses, including farming and hospitality, could be hurt by his policies, wondering why those who clean hotel rooms or pick tomatoes deserve more attention than those who care for elders. Beyond rescinded work authorizations for people living in the U.S., Care homes are having difficulty getting visas approved for registered nurses and licensed practical nurses they recruit abroad. What used to be a simple process now stretches so long that candidates reconsider the U.S. altogether, says Mark Sanchez, Chief Operating Officer of United Hebrew, a nursing home in New Rochelle, New York. And there has actually been, I reported earlier, Canada is recruiting doctors and nurses to come from the U.S. to come work in Canada. Yeah, we're seeing that Filipino nurses that once would come directly to the U.S. are now looking at the UK and other places to go. Yeah, this is what's happening. And so that really brings to the question of why are we shooting ourselves in the foot? I'm curious to see what the end game is for this. What's your goal? What is your ultimate goal? Hmm? Anyway, let's go on. What used to be, and they go on and say there are lines upon lines upon lines, Sanchez says, and now they're saying, I'm going to go to Canada and I'm going to go to Germany, and they're welcoming me with open arms. Yeah. Looking around a facility with a majority immigrant staff, the son of a Filipino immigrant wonders where his future recruits will come from. I don't have ICE coming in my door and taking my people, Sanchez says, but the pipeline that was flowing before is now coming in dribs and drabs. Long term care workers are routinely lured away, not just by hospitals and doctors' offices, but restaurants, stores, and factories. Half of the average nursing home staff turns over each year, according to federal data, making the attraction and retention of every employee vital to their operation. Robin Wozenberg of Leading Edge in Wisconsin began working to place an influx of people from Afghanistan after the U.S. pulled out its final troops 4 years ago and thousands of refugees arrived in her state. Care homes began hiring the refugees and were so delighted with them, some facilities began hiring refugees who arrived from Ukraine, Somalia, and Congo. Though many homes had employee retention rates around 30%, Wozenberg said that figure was above 90% with refugees. Trump has halted most of refugee admissions, meaning Rosenberg's successful outreach program has no new arrivals to target. It's been really devastating, Rosenberg says. Our communities that were actively working with resettlement agencies are not seeing those referrals to long term care like we were. There were no refugees coming in. Lynn Katzman, the founder of Juniper Community, which runs 21 facilities across 5 states, says it's hard enough to find the right workers with a passion for older adults. Now, just as homes gird for an influx of residents brought on by the country's demographic shift, they're facing another challenge to a stable workforce. This work is hard. It's not always been the highest paying job that one can get, but many of the immigrants who actually have chosen this work consider caregiving a noble profession. So we'll see what happens. We'll continue to follow up what's going on. But if you're in those nursing homes and in those positions and you have some comments, let me know. I certainly want to talk about that. All right, we're going to take our last break and then we're going to get to our last few articles before we go to announcements. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's the next story. It says St. Vincent Medical Center takes steps to protect nurses. This is coming out of Toledo, Ohio, just for you guys who are watching, not Indianapolis, Indiana. This is Toledo, Ohio, St. Vincent. Okay. From WTVG. It's a place of healing, but hospital administrator says violence against nurses and healthcare professionals is a growing problem. Mercy Health St. Vincent Medical Center is taking steps to protect its frontline workers. Hospital workers says violence inside the emergency rooms and hospitals halls is growing. As an ER nurse or any frontline nurse or medic in the field, you never know what you're walking into, said Chief Nursing Officer Katie Stringfellow. In an effort to protect its frontline employees, the hospital has purchased 300 911 cellular badges. Just press, just a press of a button on the back of the badge, says Stringfellow. The badge clips onto the nurse's ID. When they press the button, it sends a signal to the hospital police, letting them know there's an emergency. How does the police department know where to find that employee? Asked the reporter. So there's geo webbing from our Wi Fi network. The badges are connected with the Wi Fi network, and the locations of the Wi Fi networks are put into the system and alerts not only public safety, but it also alerts people in the area, said the president of the hospital, Jeff Dempsey. The president of the hospital, Jeff Dempsey, said the rise in violence is tied to shootings on the streets of Toledo, mental health, and drug issues. 13 Action News obtained this court document where a man was charged with assault for allegedly, quote, attempting to hit her in the face, grabbing at her equipment, and grabbing at her wrist, causing scratches and swelling. Tom Korsnack was convicted of disorderly conduct and placed on probation. Hospital administrators hope to start using devices in October. I think that's a step, maybe in the right direction, but there has to be more. I'm concerned. Do you have adequate numbers of security staff? And what happens if the Wi-Fi goes out? Just saying, because that happens. Yeah. So hopefully they have additional measures, but we do know that the Wi-Fi consistently has issues. So, all right, getting back to nursing homes, I want to share this with you. This is from the Rockford Register Star. It says 93 Illinois nursing homes at risk of closing due to Medicaid cuts. 93 skilled nursing homes facility in Illinois are among the 579 across the United States that have been deemed at risk of closing after approval of the Big Beautiful Bill and its cuts to Medicaid. Researchers from Brown University School of Public Health, at the request of the Senate Democrats, identified nursing homes in the United States that treat the highest share of Medicaid patients, 85% or more, and are at risk of closure because of reductions in Medicaid funding and other factors. The list includes 66 nursing homes in Texas, 51 in Ohio, and 39 in Missouri. Illinois nursing homes have the most facilities on the list, and they are listed here. In Cook County, I'm not going to read all of these. There's like dozens of these. About 20 on this list. But there's a lot. So there's about 20 on the list in Cook County, including like Uptown Care, Alden, Lakeland Rehab, Ambassador Nursing Home, etc. In DuPage County, there are about 5. Kane County, there's about 5. Lake County, there's 3. McHenry County, there's 1. Will County, there's 1. And that's just in the Chicago area. Now, Northern Illinois, you have Henry County, there's 1. Ogle County, there's 1. Rock Island County and Winnebago, there's like 1 or 2 there. Now you got Central Illinois, there's like 1 or 2 in each of those counties. Southern Illinois, there's like 1 or 2 in each of those counties. St. Clair has more, there's like 5 in that county. So again, if you want to know the list and you're in Illinois, head on over to this article here at the Rockford Register Star and check it out, and they'll definitely show you if your nursing home is on that list. Okay, and here's our last story of the day. And it says Kansas City nursing home leader says Trump's shortened Medicaid payment timeline may hurt patients. Let's get into it. Let me get it a little bit bigger because that's some tiny, tiny print there. Okay. Out of Topeka, Kansas. All right, here we go. Financial consequences of a new Medicaid reimbursement timeline that is part of the president's spending and tax cut bill may negatively affect patients in nursing homes, a Kansas nursing home leader said. The reconciliation bill decreased the time period when Medicaid will reimburse medical costs incurred before an individual's eligibility is confirmed, said Rachel Monger, which we talked about this last week, CEO and president of Leading Edges Kansas, a membership organization of nonprofit providers for elderly care. The time period Medicaid will repay expenses dropped from 90 days to 60 days, she said. The 90-day window is a vital safeguard that protects residents and their families from devastating financial burdens when care is needed before Medicaid applications can be completed. Many residents exceed the 60-day threshold due to common delays like dementia, lack of a legal guardian, or complicated paperwork. Like other industry leaders around the country, Monger is tracking the Medicaid changes and federal policies that have implications for nursing homes and their residents. One analysis found 7 nursing homes in Kansas are at risk of closing, and the CEO of a company that operates some of those facilities says he's worried about the impact of federal changes on his ability to hire workers. Monger said shortening the window for Medicaid payments could have consequences such as making facilities more hesitant to accept Medicaid pending residents, which would slow down hospital discharges and put a strain on the rural health systems. If the window is shortened, care provided beyond 60 days, days 61 and 90, would go unpaid, leaving families on the hook for thousands or forcing nursing homes to absorb the loss. Many older adults enter care during a crisis, and a shorter window could lead to delays in care or financial strain for families. And ultimately, they could opt to have to take the family member home when they are not medically able to, medically stable. Because what are you going to do? You're not going to can't afford thousands of dollars in bills. What are you going to do? So there's more to this story, but I think we've just really beat the time, and I don't really want to talk about it because, quite frankly, it's just depressing to think about. But I just do want to highlight some things in the story. It says that here further on, I just want to share the data currently on the CMS website is collected during different time periods depending on the metric, and so we're talking about how they're recording their data. And so they're looking at hiring. There's challenges of hiring people and filling it. And then they're worried because we're going to have this tsunami of older adults because the baby boomer generation, they're not quite 80 years old. So when you hit 80, there's a risk of nursing home goes up. And so now we're going to be seeing more of that happening. So there are several Kansas nursing homes at risk, including like Bonner Springs, Meta, Medicologist, Call River Care, Medicologist Jackson County, and others. So they did this big study in Brown University to look at that. So if you want to see more of this, you can head on over to the article here um, and take a look at this. All right, that's the end of that. That's the end of the news. Let's get on to something a little bit more fun because, man, that was dark. And I didn't have a chance to talk about a nurse making a difference because I really didn't have one today. But I will say, send our condolences to the nursing student that lost her life in the what happened at the church in Kentucky. But I wanted to share what's coming up in July 30th. So July 30th, we have our Break Free event. This is our Break Free Nurse Entrepreneur event. You can still hop in and join. As at the end of today, the early bird pricing goes away. So you probably want to hop on and get into this event. This webinar is going to be awesome. We're going to talk about ways that you as a nurse can tap into your entrepreneurial spirit and come up with businesses that you can have. And right now, it sounds like home care is going to be hot. We got to find some people to staff it, but home care looks like it's about to be hot. Nursing home care is going to be hot. So you might want to consider, some of these businesses, assisted living, home care, those types of things, what you can do. And then also possibly if you can, it looks like there might be a shift to more need of staffing agencies coming up. We'll see. But we're going to talk about how to develop your own business as a nurse and really get started. This workshop is designed for people who want to take action right now, who are ready to put the pen to paper, write out your plan, get started, get launched. We're moving forward. We want to hit the fast track. We're ready to get started. Those who want some ideas, but really for those who are focused and are like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a business for myself. How do I get started? This is what this event is for you. So this is a live webinar. You get a chance to come in. If you sign up and register, you get access to the workbook. And of course, I always throw in extra things and bonuses that will be available to you. We'll talk about those things. But yeah, join us at the Nurse Shark Academy. Go to the nurse-shark-academy.biz. I dropped the link on our Nurse Shark Academy business page, our Facebook page. You have that there. And I can also drop the link again. Um, and I'll show it here on the screen. So if you're watching, you can hit that. But join us at the Break Free event. Go to the nurse-shark-academy.biz. Join us for that event. Also, CPR classes, TB classes, all those things are coming up. So check us out at Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com. You can register for those trainings. So there's a lot that's happening that we're going to have for you. So keep an eye on our calendar. You can always check out those things. But yeah, sign up for the Break Free event. Now's a great time to get registered before the early bird pricing goes away, which it does go away today. So make sure you sign up. All right, that's it for me, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.